Hi, my name is Colleen and I am a junior at Olivet studying criminal justice and sociology. Now, before I start my presentation, I just want to say how saddened I am by not being able to give this presentation in person, and I was really looking forward to meeting new people and getting my word out there on the topic of human trafficking, and I really hope I can convey that same message through video and PowerPoint as I would if I were be able to give it in person. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you guys learned a lot from my topic. I've done so much research on it, and I feel like I've conveyed and organized my message well so that you guys will be able to understand it and help stop and prevent the continuance of human trafficking in the United States. Okay, so I've chosen some topics that I want to discuss within my presentation within the realm of human trafficking. Some things that I want to discuss include what exactly human trafficking is, because the general population sometimes doesn't know, and I want to help explain that, give the exact definition, and I want to explain how does it happen and who's at risk of being trafficked, and if it really does go on in the United States, and that will become a shock to everyone within this video. I want to explain some of the statistics within the United States and specifically in Illinois because that's where we live. And the last thing I want to talk about are the preventative steps that are being taken by law enforcement and the preventative steps that are taken within a community and what you can do to help stop and prevent human trafficking. To give you guys an exact definition of what human trafficking is exactly, is the action of illegally transporting people for forced labor or sexual exploitation in exchange for money. Now, as mentioned in the definition, there are two subcategories of human trafficking, which are labor and sex trafficking. And just so everyone knows, that victims can be involved in one or they can be involved in both. It is commonly assumed that human trafficking only happens in third world countries. But what if I told you the unfortunate fact that human trafficking could be going on right in your own community? Here is an eye-opening statistic for everyone. According to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, there are an estimated over 100,000 children that are being trafficked, and that is in the US alone. Now you guys are wondering, how does this even happen? Well, I hate to say it, but sometimes victims can be born into slavery. However, that doesn't happen in the United States. So in the US, traffickers lure their victims in a number of ways. And those ways can include kidnapping, online grooming, or physically forcing victims to do what they want. Now, I know some of you guys are wondering while watching this video, what is online grooming? And for those of you who do know what online grooming is, that's awesome, but I'm going to explain it again for those who don't know. Online grooming is the process where a sexual predator builds an online relationship with a younger teen or child, masking themselves as a younger person as well. So they can build an online relationship and potentially take that further, grooming them into being trafficked. And for those who don't know what a groomer is, a groomer can be anyone. You really don't know who is behind that screen talking to your child or teen. So a groomer can be a male or a female. They can be young, like 30, or they can be old, like, oh, I don't want to say what old is. I don't want to offend anyone, but you know what I mean. So online grooming can happen anywhere on any social media or gaming platform where chatting is available. Like, a big one is right now is Musical.ly or TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. I'm gonna name some apps adults may not know, but keep an eye out if your child has these apps. Some things called YOLO or Yeti, I believe it's called. I don't know, but I don't use these apps, so you can tell. There are apps out there that where chatting with strangers is available, and there are other websites out there that can be used for video chat, such as Omegle. Skype is one of them, and I think there's one called Chat Roulette. So be aware if your child or teen is on these websites, and that these are platforms for predators to get to know children, their information, where they're from, and everything about them, and that's just not something that we want to happen to these children. There are 6 stages to online grooming. Although they don't always happen in order, they are all present within an online grooming relationship between a predator and a child. These 6 stages are according to Jamie Nesbitt, who is an author at the Bark blog. I will explain them in more depth so you guys can better understand them. To start off, the first one is the friendship forming stage. This is typically the initial stage where the groomer begins to talk to the child. The groomer starts with small conversation to get to know the child's interests, likes and dislikes, their insecurities, and their problems to use against them for exploitation in the future. Groomers target vulnerable children because they are most likely not monitored by adults online. The next stage is the relationship forming stage. The groomer now attempts to form a closer relationship with the child by talking about the child's family and school life. At this stage, the groomer could also fill the child's needs to build a strong relationship. The groomer could send money, gifts, take them out to eat, shopping, or on dates. The groomer could also fill the child's basic needs such as food, protection, attention, and love. The next stage is the risk assessment stage. This is the stage where the groomer goes further in the relationship they have with the child. They test the waters to see how closely the child is monitored online. The groomer does typically ask questions such as who else uses this computer? Does your mom check your phone? And does anyone else see your texts? Things like that. The next stage is the exclusivity stage. At this point in the groomer and child's relationship, the groomer will look for opportunities to be alone with the child. The groomer will now try to isolate the child from the important people in their life, such as the child's parents, siblings, friends, etc. The groomer will use this alone time with the child to create a stronger, more dependent bond. The groomer will reinforce that the child needs them more than they need each other, and that the child can't really rely on anyone else. The next stage is the sexual desensitizing stage. The groomer will slowly introduce sexually explicit content to the child, such as pictures, videos, and websites of other children, and their goal is to make the child more comfortable talking about doing sexual activities and with their own body. The groomer may show nude pictures of themselves or of other children to make it seem more natural to the child. And then finally, the last stage is the conclusionary stage. This is the final grooming stage, typically where the abuse begins and the exploitation and the blackmail. At this point, the child has become solely dependent on the groomer that they think their abuse is justified. The groomer will use secrecy, blame, threats, blackmail in order to silence the child. The goal of the groomer in this stage is to maintain the child's participation and to keep them silent at the same time. And I just want to quickly go over, there are some outward signs of grooming in a child, and it can include a change in behavior, and sometimes this behavior is noticeable and sometimes it is subtle. Some signs to look out for in your child are wanting to spend more time online, being secretive about what sites or apps that they are on, switching screens to hide what they're doing, new items that parents or other family members didn't buy, and using sexual language that is not age appropriate, and volatile emotions. I want to talk about who's most at risk for being trafficked. Human trafficking knows no gender identity, no color, race, ethnicity, etc. However, there are certain demographics that I will talk about later in statistics. There are certain population groups that are at risk for being trafficked, and those groups include children, immigrants, and the impoverished community. Children are more at risk for being trafficked because their minds and their bodies are not fully developed to understand the underlying motive these traffickers have to use them for their benefit. And some children are more at risk if they have a history of abuse, neglect, or lack of support in the development in their mental, emotional, and spiritual development. On the other hand, immigrants and the impoverished community are more at risk for being trafficked because they rely on traffickers unknowingly, their underlying motives. They rely on them for food, protection, money, and just about anything that they need to survive. So that's why these traffickers use them, because they have this certain economic status where they need them and they are dependent on them to survive. So overall, traffickers prey on those who have a lower economic status and those who struggle to meet basic needs. Now, if anyone doesn't believe me by now that human trafficking does happen in the United States, I'm about to show you some statistics, maps, and graphs, etc., to physically show you some visual evidence that human trafficking does definitely happen in the United States as it does globally. Before I give you guys all of the statistical information that I have found, I just want to say that I got all my maps and graphs from a website called thepolarisproject.org. Their research is from 2018, so this is where all the demographics and the maps are from and everything. So I just wanted to preface that. It's pretty recent, so it should still give you guys an eye-opening source. And if you ever want to check out their website, I've provided the links to the pictures below in each slide, so feel free to check that out. So now here you see a map of the United States, and think of it as a weather map where the red is bad, the bad weather. Where the bad weather is happening is where the red is. So that's where the human trafficking is being reported most. And you can see it's mostly on our East Coast and mostly in the Midwest and on our borders. So I just want to say that's where it's being reported. It doesn't count the things that go unreported and go unbeknownst to United States government. Here are the statistics that I've been so excited to show you guys, and it just proves my point that human trafficking knows no gender, it knows no color, race, or ethnicity. So again, I got this graph from the Polaris Project, and I provided the link under the picture if you guys want to check out the website. So it shows in the first one that adults and minors are both trafficked, but adults just a little bit more because it starts from 18 and up, and the youngest someone can be trafficked is about 8 or 9 years old, and the average age someone is lured into sex trafficking or labor trafficking is about 13 years old. The next one is gender, and you can see here that females are more likely to be trafficked than males, but males are still in the statistic. Males can still be trafficked just as women are. So I just wanted to point that out there, that they aren't left out of the statistic. And the next one is race and ethnicity. So you can see that just about every ethnicity is listed there, from Latino to white and multi-ethnic. So you can see that Latinos and Asians are more likely to be trafficked. They have the higher statistic, but everyone is in there with, I mean, it's very close in numbers. So I just wanted to point out that not one race is more likely to be trafficked than another. This graph shows the age at which someone is brought into sex trafficking or labor trafficking. So as you can see in the graph, sex trafficking is labeled as the darker blue and labor trafficking is labeled as the light blue. So you can see that the youngest age at which someone can be trafficked is from between 0 and 8 years old. So that's what I said earlier. And the highest age at which someone is trafficked is 15 and 17 years old. And you can see that the numbers taper off as a person gets older, because sex traffickers and labor traffickers are more attractive to the younger boys and girls, because that's what brings in the most money for them. The last statistic that I would like to show is the amount of human trafficking cases reported in Illinois in 2018. As you can see, I also got this picture from the Polaris Project, and I provided the link below, so you can feel free to go to the website if you'd like to explore more on their statistics. So, as you can see, in total, there were 296 cases identified in Illinois in 2018, and 75% of those cases were identified as sex trafficking. If you look at the map of Illinois, you can see the most prevalent cases were reported in or near the Chicagoland area. The last thing I want to talk about are preventative efforts done by law enforcement and the community to help prevent human trafficking from happening. For law enforcement, they are now requiring newly implemented human trafficking training for their frontline officers. These officers need to learn the first indicators of human trafficking victims so they know how to help them and get them out of that lifestyle. The next thing is officers now look at prostitutes as victims rather than offenders, because in order to get those prostitutes out of that lifestyle, the first resources come from the officers, so they need to be able to help them rather than prosecute them, and then once they're released, they go back into that lifestyle. So by looking at them as victims rather than offenders, it'll help them move away from that. And then the last thing is law enforcement is now teaming up with non-governmental agencies to help rescue victims and to successfully prosecute those offenders who've hurt them. Now, as a community, there are many things you can do to help prevent human trafficking from happening in your own hometown. And one of those things is, like law enforcement, is to learn the indicators. You can get your own human trafficking training and you can learn the indicators yourself and educate yourself. You can also look it up online and everything. There are many articles about it, and learning the indicators will help you know what is going on and be more aware in your community. The next thing is to see something, say something. If you see any suspicious activity, you have to gather some type of evidence or description so you can give to those authorities/officers so they know who they're looking for. So, for example, if you see some repeated activity of a man going in and out of a motel with different girls every other day, that would be something to report to your local law enforcement. The next thing is, if you do see something, not only you can contact law enforcement, you can also contact the human trafficking hotline. And the number for that, and I will provide it in my presentation, the number is 1-888-373-7888. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. So for a second time, it's 1-888-373-7888. And that's the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Some other things you can do are volunteer and support anti-trafficking efforts within your own community. You can use social media and raise awareness and recognize January as the National Anti-Slavery and Human Trafficking Month, and become a mentor to at-risk youth. I know there's many mentoring programs within Illinois that you can join, and you can become a big brother or a big sister to someone who is in need. Lastly, I would like to thank everyone who has watched this video. I hope that I have educated you on the topic of human trafficking, and I have helped you learn the preventative efforts done and what you can do to help prevent human trafficking in your own community. And I would also like to thank my mentor, Dr. Shelley Stroud, and my advisor, Dr. Craig Bishop, who have never stopped believing in me, and they've always encouraged me to go that extra mile, and they have given me so many opportunities this semester for this topic of human trafficking to educate it on everyone in the community around Olivet. So again, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me, which I will be providing in my reference page. Thank you.